Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining JMT Consulting. My name is Melissa Waters. I'm the events manager here at JMT. We are going to give you just a couple minutes to continue getting logged in, and then we will get started. So we will be right back. Thank you. Okay, thank you again. My name is Melissa Waters. I'm with JMT Consulting, and we have Byron Welchuk, Paul Lopez, and Andrew Gilbert joining us today from Nexonia for our Nexonia, a one-stop shop for T&E management. Just a couple things before we get started. JMT is sponsoring this webinar. We are a small consulting firm. We work only with nonprofits. We've been in the business for about 27 years now, and we are the only company that is a nonprofit-only business. A few housekeeping notes for you. If you have questions today, in your GoToWebinar toolbox on the right-hand side of your screen, there is a questions panel. You can chat those questions to us, and we will answer them at the end once the demo is done. And then also keep in mind that if for some reason you can't make it through the whole presentation, we will be recording this and sending out the presentation to you tomorrow. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Nexonia guys so they can get started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Melissa. So it's Byron Wolchuk here with Nexonia. So I am our partner channel manager, meaning I work closely with JMT, to help bring their clients a solution for T&E management, which they may not be able to find in other instances or with, some other expense vendors. So with me on the line, I also have Andrew Gilbert. He is one of our product specialists at Nexonia, and he's really here to answer any technical questions that might be coming up throughout our time today and throughout the demo. As well as on the line is we have Paul Lopes. He is a Nexonia account executive. So that being said, his role working with a partner is to really work with all of their clients. That being said, so answer any questions they may have, walk them through a demo, and he'll be the one presenting today. So just before we dive in here, a little bit of a history about Nexonia, just so you know where we're coming from. We've been around since 2004. That's when our first app launched. And since then, we've really been driving the medium to large business market and helping out a whole bunch of not-for-profits. Right now, Nexonia alone has over 9,000 companies in 18 different countries. We also are a family of brands. So that being said, under the umbrella is Tally, which is for smaller clients, and then we also have a large enterprise solution if you are a bigger size company, upwards of 1,000 employees. So what's nice is there's nothing to install. That includes, Nexonia Expenses, Time. We also have a travel product as well. It's called Nexonia Travel. Think about it as kind of an Expedia built into the Nexonia platform. Again, nothing to install. It's all a SaaS software. So you get full training and support with Nexonia. There's no additional cost to this. You can go in. We have a help portal. You can call in. You can email. So all avenues are covered. And then, as I mentioned before, we have everywhere from a few users to thousands of users on the platform. I'll just hop over to the next slide here. So taking a step back, some of the leading frustrations for teeny program administrators, every year we kind of do a survey. And the biggest one, and I guess increasing the most, is employees losing paper receipts or submitting without receipts. This comes down to company policies of you need to have some evidence of what you're spending on expenses. So in 2017, that was the biggest leader of the frustrations at 52%. So it's nice, and what you'll see in the demo today is you can house everything inside Nexonia. So you snap a picture of the receipt, and right away your employees can crumple it up and toss that receipt away. Again, you're looking at employees' failure to submit report on time. We call it our auto neg feature to make sure those employees are getting their expense reports in. It takes time to reconcile, review, and approve reports. Again, this is all automated within Nexonia. And we'll just hop over here. Next slide. All right, so looking at an executive level, what is the biggest reason for change of automation? Number one at 59% being simplifying the process for employees and managers. A lot of the times with the manual process, you have a whole bunch of steps going on. Your employees are having to kind of go back to the old school shoebox of receipts, take that, record everything, whether it's in Excel or on paper, get it over to their accounting department. The accounting department then has to go through everything, input it into an accounting system, or get it over to the right approval hands. And then from there, it's a manual approval process. So what expense automation does is it eliminates all of that. As I mentioned before, all the receipts are taken with a picture, housed inside Nexonia. And from there, the employee, once that expense item gets coded, can just click a button and it gets sent to approvals. Once everything's approved, it will automatically get sent over to your accounting system. So again, getting rid of that manual process. We'll hop over to the next slide here. Promise there's only a couple more before we dive into the demo. So this is just kind of taking a step back, looking at the overall what you need from an expense solution, end-time solution in terms of automating everything. So the biggest one, again, straight away, automation, expense report creation, workflow process and approvals, and direct credit card feeds. Paul's going to cover this in the demo today. Mobile applications. Being in 2018, employees are always looking for a mobile application since, let's be honest, most of the time throughout the day, we're on our phones. Compliance. This, you need to have an expense and time solution. What you'll see with Nexonia is all of your company policies can be built into the back end. Again, integration, I touched on that. To get a truly seamless workflow for expense and time, you need to have that automated to your accounting system, your ERP, whether it's a payroll solution, we can work with that. And then again, there's reporting. You want to see what your expenses are. Let's say what your biggest category is for expenses. That reporting can be done inside an expense and time automation solution. All right, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Paul Lopsh, our account executive, and he'll walk you through the Nexonia T&E solution today.
Thank you, Byron, for the introduction. As Byron mentioned, my name is Paul, and I'll be walking you through both our web and mobile application today. So for starters, you probably noticed my mobile device is up on the screen in the center right, and in the background is the web browser. So to begin, I'm going to actually start with the mobile app. I'm going to submit some expenses in the mobile app, and then I'm going to move over to the web browser and walk you through the web browser, including our approval workflow. So to begin, I'm just going to point out that our system is highly configurable. The approval process is pretty flexible. The digital expense form that you're going to see, we can put in whatever fields you want. In this demo account, I have a customer, project, and cost center field or dimension, but I mean, you don't have to have those if you don't want, or you can have others if you need. So as I go along the demo, obviously, please feel free to write down any questions because there will be Q&A at the end. So to begin, you probably notice on the mobile device, I'm logged in as a user named Mary, and you'll probably notice a menu of options here. So there are 6 icons. And on the top right, you probably notice one icon shaped as a credit card, and it's labeled transactions. So if I were to link a credit card to my account, I'm going to see that icon there. I can click on it, and I'm going to see my transactions there. But if I don't link any cards, then I won't even see that there, and it won't even be an option. To the right is the approvals icon. If I click on that, I can see a list of items that were sent to me for approving or reviewing. And again, that wouldn't be there if I'm not approving. So if I'm a user that does not do approvals, that won't even be an option. To the left is the reports icon. If I were to click on that, I'm going to see a list of my existing expense reports. At the very bottom, if I scroll up with my finger, I'm also able to see a list of my expense reports there at the bottom that I already created. I can click on any one of them to go into them and see, all my expense claims or items that are there. On the bottom row, you'll notice where it says report, item, and receipt. Those 3 icons with the plus symbols. That's where I'm either going to create a new expense report, create a new expense item or claim that goes into a report, or just simply upload a receipt. So to begin, I'm going to click on that report with the plus symbol. And when I do so, it auto-generates a report title for me. So I can click on that title, click on it again, delete the title, and obviously I have the freedom to call this whatever I want. So maybe I'm just going to call this trip ABC. And I'm going to save it. So just like that, I've created an expense report or form or expense report that I can put all my expenses into. And obviously this trip ABC just acts as a bucket or placeholder for all my expenses. And I can start adding expenses at will now. And all I have to do is click add item at the bottom. And I have 2 options. I can either create a new item, which is how I would enter a out-of-pocket expense that's reimbursable, and then add from credit card. So I'd go there if I wanted to see my card transactions, if you did attach corporate credit cards to this program. So for starters, I'm just going to click create a new item because I do have a receipt in front of me, and I may want to upload this receipt shortly. But for starters, I'm just going to code it. So I have a customer field. I have a project field. I have an expense category field. I'll call that meals lunch. And then I have a cost center. I'll tag that to sales. And then on the top right, I'm just going to click on that camera icon. You probably notice the camera icon. And I'm just going to quickly take a snap of my receipt. And I'll just save that. So just like that, I've attached an expense claim to my trip ABC report, and I can add as many more as I want now. To continue adding, I'll just click add item on the bottom left. But before I continue, I'm just going to click on that because I know I went through it a little bit quickly, and I'm just going to review everything you just saw. So first of all, we do have multiple dimensions, and as I mentioned, Nexonia is configurable, so labels can change. Some of these dimensions could be removed or hidden. But for starters, we do have the universal dimensions that everyone will have, such as amount, currency, transaction date, and then expense category. Then we do have some other fields. I have a customer field, I have a project field, I have at the bottom, a cost center field. Those fields can be relabeled to be whatever they want, or they could just be removed or hidden if you're not using them at all. And then finally, if you look at the expense category field, essentially what you see here are front-end labels. They can be labeled whatever you want. They can be customized to whatever you need. But the important point to note is that behind these labels are GL codes, so it can be mapped out to your accounting system. And then finally, it says paid by employee reimbursed. Yes, that's automatic. If it came in from a corporate card, it would automatically say paid by company reimbursed. No. I put a billable field there just to kind of show you our capabilities. These are for companies that want to track things as billable or not back to a client. Again, not all companies work this way, so that's not something you need to turn on. You don't need to have that. And then finally, at the very bottom is a free form field, memo field, which could be labeled whatever you need. Sometimes it's used for a business purpose, or if you need some sort of note related to the expense, you can use it there. With that said, that kind of sums up the basic dimensions you see here. And now for our next step, I'm just going to move on to credit cards. So if I click Add Item again on the bottom left and click Add from Credit Card, I'm able to see a list of my card transactions. So right now what I have in here is a dummy card feed. We do have the ability to attach live feeds, and the way this works is that when card transactions come in here, 3 pieces of information is brought in per transaction: the transaction date, the amount, and the vendor details. So if I wanted to code one of these expenses, I would just select the one I do want to code. So I do have a transaction there called Chili's, and you probably notice this is the same expense form that you saw before. The only difference is it automatically brings in the information from the card. You see the amount, the currency, the transaction date, and at the very bottom, you'll notice all the vendor details are brought in also. So all I have to do is maybe I'll just tag this to meals lunch, maybe put in a cost center, and then I'll attach a receipt to this. I'll click that camera icon on the top right, and then I'll attach that receipt, and I'll save it. And just like that, that specific item just left my card feed. And obviously it leaves my card feed to prevent me from accidentally submitting the same expense twice. So just like that, I've coded that card transaction. I want to go back into that card transaction one more time, just to kind of explain a few details. Essentially, this is exactly the same form that you saw before. The main difference, you'll notice that it says it's paid by company reimburse no. Obviously, that's just automatic because it recognizes it as a corporate card expense. But besides that, most of the details are pretty much the same as the reimbursable expense. So that kind of sums up the submissions of the 2 types of expenses, and you are able to even attach personal cards. Obviously, if you were to attach personal cards, it'll be recognized as a reimbursable expense and not non-reimbursable. But with that said, that kind of sums up the submission portion. As a next step, I'm just going to quickly, before I submit this off, I'm going to actually quickly explain how we can set up policies or rules in the system to kind of ensure that the submissions of the expenses are in accordance with your company policy. So if I were to click on meals lunch as an example, and obviously I filled out this form completely, but some rules that we could set up is just to ensure that people attach a receipt to every expense transaction, and that all the fields are properly filled out. You could put in rules that if they try to submit it or it's not properly filled out, it notifies the end user, and it gives them a notification, you need a receipt or you need some other information. And obviously the information you need for one expense category or account may be different than another. So maybe for meals you need attendees, but for other expenses you don't. Maybe for some expenses you need a reason or a memo, but maybe for other expenses you don't. So rules can be associated to the expense category. So if I were to change this expense category to meals dinner as an example, you're going to now notice that there's a tip field at the top under the amount that wasn't there before. And if I were to scroll down, you now notice that there's an attendees field right there above the paid by, where there wasn't an attendees field before. And at the very bottom, the memo field has now turned red. That just means that a memo is mandatory. So if I were to try to save this without a memo, it's going to tell me that a memo is mandatory. So once again, the policies that we could set up is pretty flexible. I mean, we could do dollar thresholds. We can set up per diems like daily meal allowances, and there's other things we can do. And generally speaking, our policies could also be set up as red flag or yellow flag rules. So yellow flag means that if they violate the policy, they could still submit it, but it's going to get flagged for the approver to see. Red flag means it's just a total blocker, like you just saw there with the memo, where they can't even submit it. And besides that, you can also set up policies based on dollar thresholds. So if it's over $10, maybe a receipt is needed, but under $10, it's not needed. So overall, our policies are flexible. And again, if you did have further questions on that, please feel free to submit them, as we will be doing Q&A at the end. As a next step, I'm just going to quickly go over to the web browser. As you can see, our web browser does have multiple tabs at the top, and I'm going to quickly kind of walk through the expense submissions from the web browser perspective. But before I do, I'll just point out that all these tabs at the top can be turned on or off based on need. So we do have timesheets, time off, and expense modules. A lot of people do get them together as a suite. You don't have to get them together as a suite. It's possible to just get expenses by itself or timesheet by itself if you wanted to. If that's the case, then obviously you wouldn't have access to the other modules. And as for the approvals and everything to the right, those tabs can be turned off based on user role. Not all users are admins, so they don't need access to all that. With that said, I'm just going to click on the expense tab. And you'll probably notice at the top here where it says title trip ABC, that was the exact same report I just created on the mobile app. It's here on the web. And if I were to click on that, I'm able to see those two individual expense items I just submitted or just entered. They haven't been submitted yet officially because I didn't hit submit, but it's sitting there and I can add more expenses. So I could just do my entire expense report on the mobile app and submit it from the mobile app if I wanted to. I could do the entire report on the web and submit it from the web if I wanted to, or I can rotate between both. If I were to click add expense item here on the web, this is where I'd code the expense online. Any pictures I took of on the mobile device, I can see it here. So any kind of receipts. And then on top of that, I could upload receipts off my computer. I could take a picture of the webcam. I do have an email. So we do have receipts at nexonia.com, an email where you can forward your receipts to that you have an email, and it'll attach it to your expense report. Again, this can be used differently based on different user roles. There could be users that may just use the mobile app to take pictures of the receipt and then do the coding on the web at the end of the day or at the end of the week. And sometimes we do have people who may have executive or admin assistants. If that's the case, maybe they take pictures of the mobile app, but the executive assistant has access to their profile to kind of code and submit the expense on their behalf. And this is right here, the executive assistant functionality, where I have a drop down with other usernames. I could go into their profiles if I was their admin assistant, and I could have access to their receipts if they took a picture of it on the mobile app, and I'm able to code on their behalf. With that said, I'm just going to click submit on this expense. And as soon as I click submit, it gets pushed forward to whoever has been designated as my approver. So I did submit this as the employee, Mary, and the approver, Paul, just received it. So I can see that the approver is Paul. That information is visible to me. And Paul, or whoever's the approver, would receive an email and mobile notification to let them know that something has been submitted. They can then go into the mobile app and approve out of the mobile, or they could come here into the web browser and approve from here also. With that said, I'm just going to go to the approvals tab, and there's that expense report. I can now approve or reject the entire report, or if I wanted to, I can click on this report, open it up, and now I'm able to approve or reject the individual items that you see there. And if I wanted to, I can just click on one of these items and maybe scroll through them. So I'm going to click next item at the bottom, and maybe I'll scroll through them. Maybe I have to change a few things. That's fine. As an approver and an admin, I can make changes. And then, as I mentioned, I can approve or reject everything, or maybe I'll just, in this case, approve one, and maybe I'll reject the second. And when I do reject an item, it gives me the ability to enter in a comment or reason. So I'll just put reason for rejection, and that's been cleared from my approval queue. So anything that's been rejected, nothing really gets deleted. It just gets pushed back to the end user. If I go back to the expenses, and the end user would receive an email notification letting them know it's been rejected. They're also able to see this red arrow moving backwards telling me there's been an item on this report that's been rejected. One has been approved, one has been rejected. So as an end user, I can get that email or mobile notification, and I can go to my web browser or my mobile app to look at it, make any changes, and even resubmit it if I wanted to. Furthermore, anything that's been approved would just get pushed forward. So what you just saw here was a very simple one-step approval process. We can have multiple steps if you want. So there's no limit. So maybe after I approve it, it goes to another approver. But if there is no other approver after me, then it'll sit in an approval queue where it can be then exported to the accounting system or even the payroll system. So that kind of sums up the approval workflow. The only other points I'd make is, as I mentioned, as with everything in Nexonia, it is flexible in how you set it up. During setup, you will get an implementation specialist. They'll send you some spreadsheets and ask you how you want to get this set up. Because there is, obviously different organizations may have different workflows. But I'll just, make some points here about the approval process that it could be not only multiple steps, it could be rerouted based on dollar thresholds. So if it's under a certain amount of money, maybe it goes to one person, but if it's over, it goes to a second person, or maybe it normally always goes to two people, but maybe it goes to a third person if it's over a certain amount of money. So that's one way we can reroute it, and we can reroute it based on a dimension selection. So if you're in an organization that's project-based, maybe it gets rerouted based on project or even expense category. But that kind of sums up the approval process. I guess as a next step, I'll just make a few points here on how our exporting works. So the specifics as it relates to your organization, again, you may want to send questions so we can specifically answer those questions, because there's all kinds of different accounting systems and payroll systems. So what I have to say about each may be different, but ultimately we have the ability to export data to both accounting and payroll. Only fully approved expenses would be exported, and we can export all the data that you need. And besides that, we obviously keep all data within Nexonia for a minimum of 7 years. So all data, including receipt images, stay within Nexonia, and then you can pull that information anytime out of a reporting module. We do have a reporting module and essentially could extract any kinds of information that you need. With that said, that kind of sums up the expense portion of this demo in terms of submissions and approvals. As the next step of the demo, I'm just going to go into timesheets. It shouldn't take too long. Timesheets is a little bit of a simpler app, but we do offer timesheets as a separate license. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of how our timesheet solution works. So for starters, with timesheets, you can track time to different dimensions if you want. So it could be tracking time to work the customer project tasks. That's how my example account is set up. But with some organizations, it may be different. So the specific dimensions could change, but that's the basic gist of the timesheet. We do have a second timesheet view where you can, instead of just putting total time to a customer job task project, etc., maybe you put your start-stop time, so 9 to 3, and then it'll calculate the total time that you're putting to that specific task at hand. With that said, if I wanted to enter some time with my current setup, I would just click on current week. And I have 3 fields here, as I mentioned. I'm going to put a company, a project, a task, or a job. And then I'm going to code some time. And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to put a second example here, maybe tag, and then code some time. So just like that, I've entered in some time into the timesheet. I'm going to save this. And when I save it, it stays in draft mode. I haven't clicked submit, so it just stays there. I mean, I can keep adding more time as I go about my day and week and only submit it when I want to. So I can go back and click submit when I'm ready. Before I do, I'm just going to click copy row. So I selected the copy row to kind of make a duplicate of that entry and just change the job. And then put some more hours. And now I'm ready to submit. So just like that, I've submitted my timesheet. And as you can tell, and now there's a little blue arrow moving forward telling me it's been submitted. And that's kind of the basics of the timesheet. There's a few points I'm going to make about this. So first of all, as I mentioned, I mean, a lot of these fields are editable, so the specific content of these fields can change. But some of the rules around how this works is as follows. These 2 dimensions here have a parent-child relationship. So if I choose company A, maybe there's one set of projects. If I choose company B, there's a different set. And besides that, there could be additional fields. We could put more than 3 if you need. So there is, ways we can configure this. If you want to track things to internal work, that's fine. Instead of having project, there could be an internal option that people select and track time to internal work, whether it's office work or some other kinds of work definitions that you may put in there. And beyond that, you probably noticed that we do have a billable field. The billable field could be hard-coded yes, always, no, always, where the user can't change it, or it could be linked yes or no to a project. So maybe for some projects it's yes, some projects it's no. Or another option is just allowing the end user to have a checkbox where they can determine if something is billable or not billable, or even have the approver determine that. So there are different ways of setting that up, but once submitted, once again, it'll go to whoever's been designated as the approver. That approver would get an email or mobile notification. They can go into their web browser or mobile to approve, and the logic to approve timesheet is very similar to expenses. It could be one step or it can be multiple steps. So if I were to go to the approvals tab and click on my timesheet, I'll notice at the very top that was a timesheet that was just entered. And again, just like the expenses, I could approve or reject the entire timesheet, or I can do it by line item, and I always have the ability to make any edits that I want to this. In this example, I'm just going to click approve for everything. Actually, I'm going to select everything, click approve. And just like that, that specific time entry was cleared from my approval queue, the one I just did now. Like I mentioned earlier, anything that gets exported would have to be fully approved. So same logic applies to timesheet. After I approve it, it's either going to go to the next approver or it's going to be in the approval queue. So that kind of sums up timesheet. Just to let you know, we do have a mobile app available for timesheet, which would be very similar to this. Again, if you wanted further information on that, you can always send us questions. But that kind of sums up the general gist of our submissions and approvals here. As I did mention, with the both time expense, there is certain features and functionality that we may not have time in a webinar like this to go through everything. So with the expenses, we do support multiple currencies. We do convert back to base currencies. So maybe in most of your case, US dollars. And we do have other functionality around that. So if you did have specific requests for your organization, please submit that. But with that said, that does sum up the overview that's going to show you today. And maybe now I'll kind of close things off so we can kind of maybe continue with the next step, which is Q&A.
Hey Paul, it's Andrew here. There's nothing as far as questions that have come through so far. So nothing really to this portion quite yet. Not sure if anyone's trying to type anything in, but yeah, it seems like you might have a bit of time here. Should anyone have any questions, really anything at all?
Okay, sure. I mean,
Paul, it's Melissa. I have a question for you. If people are interested in speaking with you further about Nexonia, how should they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if they want to get in touch with me, they can send an email directly to me, and I can give you my contact details. So my email is paul.lop as in Peter, es at nexonia.com. So that's paul.lop es as in Sam at Nexonia, nexonia.com.
Wonderful, thank you. And just so everybody remembers, if you do have questions, you can use the questions panel in your GoToWebinar toolbar. You can type that in and we will see them and answer them as they come in. And if not, we will wrap it up shortly. We'll just give you guys another minute or two.
And as we're waiting, I'll just point out that we have recently released a travel booking tool. It wasn't the focus of this webinar, obviously, but our travel booking tool is fully integrated with our expense platform. It'll just be a separate tab in the user interface, so people can book their travel, airfare, rentals, hotels out of Nexonia, and it'll automatically create expense reports out of that in the expense tab. And with that travel platform, you can also set up help you guys get group rates, discounts in terms of bookings and accommodation, and obviously it does kind of automate the process of people were using. Maybe some people aren't using travel booking tools now. That are corporate travel booking tools. Maybe they're just using what's publicly available, Expedia, or things of that nature. With the corporate travel booking tool, there can be a pre-approval set up if you want. Maybe pre-approvals only within certain roles. So again, if you guys want further information on that, please feel free to reach out, and we can always send you some information on that.
All right, with that, it looks like we don't have any further questions. So I will go ahead and end this for us, and we will be sending out a copy of this recording tomorrow. But we want to thank the Nexonia guys for their time, as well as all of you for joining us today. And for a list of future webinars and events that we have, you can go to jmtconsulting.com and click on the events tab where you'll find our calendar. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye.